IVM.
Hi everybody, just wanted to ask everyone for a quick favor. We're running a brand survey right now and would really appreciate it if you could let us know what you think about the advertising on IVM. Go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and do let us know. As part of this, we'll be selecting 10 random participants and sending them some IVM swag, so do fill out those surveys.
The journeys of creators and entrepreneurs hold a ton of insights and learnings for all of us to dig into. So when the journeys of an entrepreneur and creator, it's a whole lot richer and infinitely more insightful. So in this special 150th episode of Advertising is Dead, I'm speaking to pastry chef, creator, podcaster, author, and founder and CEO of Love 15 Patisserie, Pooja Dhingra, on her entrepreneurial and creator journeys and understand how she does what she does and how we can all learn from it. I'm Varun Duggirala, and we're right back with Pooja Dhingra on our 150th episode. Wow, that's a lot of episodes. Catch you right after the break.
$100. That's all it takes to begin your journey with Bitcoin and Ethereum. No, really. With CoinSwitch, you can start investing in over 100 cryptocurrencies with just 100 rupees. On top of that, there are zero charges for deposits and withdrawals, so you can trade, buy, sell, however and whenever you want. All of this, plus their extremely intuitive interface, makes CoinSwitch the perfect app for beginners in the crypto space. But don't take my word for it. Just download CoinSwitch for free and try it out for yourself. If you'd like more information on cryptocurrencies, tune into a show about crypto with me, Rohan Joshi, my new adventure on IVM Podcasts. CoinSwitch, kuch to badlega.
Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're talking to Pooja. Hi, Pooja. Welcome to Advertising is Dead. I can't believe I haven't called you on this podcast yet.
Hi, thank you for having me. 150th episode.
Yes, 150th episode.
I feel very special. Thank you.
I was sitting on saying, okay, I've always had this thing about, okay, what do you do at these like 50, 100, 150? And I realized that what I really have come down to saying, I want to bring conversations which I know that I'm going to be super comfortable with, but also which I'm like, why have I not done this before? It's that now. Like, why have I not done this? Because I think 150 is too late to get you onto this podcast. And I'm happy I finally got you on. Because you and I have spoken about a lot of things. You and I have spoken about being an entrepreneur, content creator. I have bugged you at random times, asking you about 1 second, I'm doing this content piece, but there's also a business. How do I make them merge together?
And the most important question, how do we make our podcast make money?
Exactly. How do you make a podcast make money? Most important question for all. How do you make money? I think is something every content creator is fully sitting and saying, how do we do this? I want to kind of start off by doing a bit of like a rewind, right? Was this always what you wanted to do? Was the aim always to work in the pastry side of things, food side of things? The creator part will bring in later, but more from the entrepreneur side. Has this always been a focus?
So I think that, growing up, baking was always a passion. It was always something that I did. Whether it would be my career or not was, not something that I was sure of. I always had these dreams of, owning a cafe, being in the F&B business. My dad is an entrepreneur and has built his business from scratch. So I knew that I didn't want to do a job anywhere. I knew that I wanted to build my own business. For a brief moment, I went to law school. Did that for...
What?
Yeah, when I was 16, 17. I don't know, somehow I was like, okay, I should go to law school and then I'll figure what I want to do. And I went to law school for 2 weeks. I saw the books and, like when something is so wrong for you. And I went and had the conversation with my parents, told them that I don't want to do this. And then that led me to hospitality. So yeah, I always knew I wanted to do entrepreneurship business in some format. The pastry came to me like that tube light, that bulb that went off saying, this is what that happened in actually hospitality school in Switzerland.
I can't picture you as a lawyer. Somehow there's a part of me which is like
a bad lawyer.
Nicest lawyer ever. No, it's okay. Let's agree to all clauses and move. What will happen? What you just said about the fact that I think that what we're surrounded by many times when we're growing up also in many ways, directs us towards direction in what we want to do, right? I mean, it's almost like there's that slight nudge. And then if you realize the nudge really catches on, like I had that nudge towards, do you want to be a doctor when I was growing up, and did not work. Till one day my father heard a thud next to him and looked aside, and I was in theater next to him and I'd fallen flat because I saw blood. So definitely not going to be a doctor is what he realized. But when you kind of leave that circle and you go into, let's say, like you went to hospitality school and stuff, there are also things that you learn about the space which you might not have really known about. So what was that period like in terms of, because there would have been certain things that have gotten instilled in you during that period which kind of brought you to where you are. So what were those?
Oh, that is such a good question, because I was 17 and I was like, I'll do hospitality. I had no idea what hospitality meant. And so, I went to Switzerland, and luckily my brother studied with me. So both of us were together. So it wasn't as alone, like new country, new language. It was a great experience, because for once it was like I got to be who I wanted to be. There was no like preconceived notion of this is Pooja, because when you grow up in Bombay and, everyone has this idea of who you are and what you're going to end up doing. Now I was like, I can be myself, which was great for me. But it was also just understanding the industry, right? Like I didn't realize everyone is like, oh, I love food, I should open a restaurant. I love drinking, I should open a bar, without realizing what the back end work of that is. And for me, that was the realization, right? We'd start our days at 6 a.m. We'd start with breakfast service. And by the time we would finish, I would come home, it's like you're standing for 14, 15 hours. By the time you come home, you're like exhausted and you're dead. You spend all you went through different departments. So understanding what that meant, like hotel management, what does that mean? And it was like the first 6 months was just breaking me into that and being like, oh, this is what I've signed up for. And then after, I got used to it is when I actually fell in love with it. And I'm like, oh, I love this aspect of it. And maybe I don't like this that much, but I prefer this. And, so it all kind of came together.
And if you fast forward from then to when did you become a content creator in your head? I think that I'm going to pick these two, because I think that's both starting points.
What is even a content creator? I don't know. So for me, it was always, I love documenting things, right from my childhood. Like if you go through, one of my childhood best friends came over the other day, and we were going through all these old photographs that we have from school. And I was that person in school in the 5th and 6th grade who would get a camera and like just randomly take pictures. And my friend is going through these albums and she's like, you realize this is not a special occasion. It's not like this is an album of a birthday party. This
is an Instagram feed.
This is a Friday night in your house. Like we're all just chilling. Like, like this is, so I've always been that person. I've always been the person who loves memories and, very emotional and kind of taking all of that. And so for me, finding a platform like Instagram was just like second nature. It was almost like documenting my life, my day. Oh, this is what I'm doing now. This is what I'm baking now. And for many years, it was like maybe a lot, because I was like out of control. I was posting a lot and I was doing everything. And all my friends were like, this is too much. But I was like, this is just me representing who I am through, this. And things compound, right? So now it's been 11 years of doing that. I don't know when someone the other day in an interview called me a content creator and a chef. I was like, oh, I didn't know when that switch happened.
Yeah, when that switch happened, yeah.
So I just embrace it now. I love it. I feel like I document my day. I distill everything that happens around me and I showcase what I do for a living. It gets challenging especially last year when work stopped. I had to ask myself these questions, because for me, it was so incidental, right? It was just part of my job and it was what I was doing. And then when my job stopped, I was like, oh, what am I now? So I've been through that whole journey of what is content creation.
You mentioned last year, right? And I want to get to that, because I know that there's been, you've been through a journey, not just like through your entire 15, but also the last year has been another entire journey for you in that sense. But just before that, I want to ask you that when you set up, what did you want to set up? Let's start with that. Like, how do you kind of start off by saying, okay, I know I've done this. I've studied hospitality. Now I've always wanted that cafe. I always wanted to do stuff around pastries and everything else. And macaroons, I'm guessing is obviously which I will thank you for sending some of those. I have just finishing the entire box. But what was that starting point like? What did you set out to do and how did that evolve over time?
So I basically, before I moved to Paris, so I went to Switzerland. I went to that's when I realized that I wanted to do pastry. I came back to India and I went to my parents. And I was just like, I wanted to live in Europe. I was, young, in love, whatever. I wanted to be there. So I went and told them that I have a plan. I will go study pastry in France and I will come back. And I will open this chain of patisseries. I will have a central kitchen and I will open these stores. Not like, I don't even know how they believed me, but they believed me. And I went to Paris and, I ate the macaroon and all of that. The concept kind of started becoming clearer when I was away. But the minute I came back, it's almost as if like I had the blueprint of what I wanted to do ready in front of me. And I was, when you're young, people always say like, oh, inexperience is bad. I think in my case, the fact that I was so inexperienced actually worked in my favor because I didn't know the limits of what I could and could not achieve. So at 23, I was like, I can do everything. I can do this also, I can be that also. There's no like, who are you? It's like, what do you want to do and who do you want to be to achieve that, right? So I still remember the pastry landscape 12 years ago was very different in the country. We didn't have, I came in, I was also right place, right time. I had a book. I didn't have a business plan, but I had a book which I knew was going to be the direction in which I wanted to go. I read like this, and also for first-time entrepreneurs who really want to get started, there's this book called The High Performance Entrepreneur by Subrata Bhatt. It's one of my favorite books. And I gift it to people when they set out on their own. So it's a very special book to me. But I read that and I was fully in the zone of I want to start my business, etc. So I had this, this book in which I would cut up images for magazines. So it would be images of pastry shops. It would be merchandise. It would be what the display counter would look like. It would be pictures of the people that I wanted as customers. So I would, I went in and I took out all these things. It would be pictures of, awards I wanted to win. It was and like 10, 11 years ago, what was manifestation and what was visualization? And I just knew that, okay, this is what I want to do. And I made that plan and I kept it aside. It wasn't something that I looked at or anything, but I just knew that I had to keep working every day and eventually I would get somewhere there. And, like 5 years into Lure 15, I think every part of that book was pretty much done, and I was like, oh, it's time to make a new book now.
There are a couple of things I pick up from that, right? One is this, people have this notion that you need to know exactly what you do before you kick it off. And it's not even winging it. It's almost like, okay, now let me just see where this goes. I think isn't given enough prominence because honestly, that was my journey as well, right? Glitch, we didn't know what Glitch was going to be. Like we're two guys who quit our job saying, okay, let's do something fun. Literally, what is the business plan? Let's do something fun. But what I like about what you just said is there's that layer of, let's put a scrapbook down almost of all the things I want as elements. You're not saying this is the plan. You're saying, I would love to have all of these together. And while you're saying this, I remembered you have, in a sense, what you said is actually how Spielberg builds his movies. Steven Spielberg has this system where he says, think about it, like Steven Spielberg has this system where he takes all the scenes he would love to have in a movie and he puts them down on a sheet. So when he's writing the movie, he's throwing those in there. Like when he's writing Indiana Jones, he's like, oh, I'd love to have him being chased by a really large rock. That'd be a great visual. Now, somewhere in between writing the movie, okay, let's drop that scene in here. So in that sense, you don't necessarily have to have, need to have all the moments you want, all the things you want. But I really like that part. And I think that's one core thing many people can take off from. And obviously the book didn't have what last year brought about, right? Obviously.
Oh, I don't think any book in the world would ever have had.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. And so tell me about that period, because I know that because I do know you personally as well. I do know that you went through many questions, and it's and also across all entrepreneurs, anybody, they were the questions that kind of come up exactly like what you were faced with. And how do you kind of work around? How do you move ahead from that?
So to be very honest, last year around March was when Lure 15 actually completed 10 years, in the business. And it was the first time I was like, hey, you know what? We finished 10 years. You're a profitable company. You're a growing company. You should be proud of yourself. So 1st of March, I was like, yay. And little did I know, by the middle or end of March.
Somebody came behind and said, hey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you least expect it, right? Like I was... It's like you've studied for one paper and, like you're ready for it and you go there and this is a completely different, the question changed completely. So that was the feeling I had. It was a very lonely experience because we were all isolated at home and you had to make all these big decisions alone. I felt like there were many, at least the first few weeks, there was so much confusion because you didn't know, the reality of what was hitting us and how this would pan out in the longer picture. Obviously, the F&B business was very badly hit. And we are a business that relies on our cash flows. We are not like a tech company. Like I would speak to my friends. I remember calling Suchita and she's like, I have an 18-month runway. I was like, 18 months?
Runway,
I was like, it's going to be tough in 2 months for us to pay rent and pay salaries, etc. Like it's going to get challenging. And at that point, even raising money from the market was a little bit, no one was putting their money because there was so much uncertainty. and no one was putting money in food because they were like, let's just wait and see how things will pan out, etc. So it was tough because I knew that I had to, I had, for the first time in my life, I had like a pros and cons list. I never do it. But for the first time, I had a pros and cons list of keeping Law 15 and shutting it down completely, right? Something that you built with your whole heart for, 10 years. I've made all sacrifices, built everything for 10 years towards this. And suddenly it could all go away. So it was a time of asking really tough questions. It was a time of, who am I if I'm not this person? It was very spiritual in a way, this whole experience. And I think a lot of people went through that, right? They went through asking themselves hard questions. And at the end of it, I just, after like many weeks of just crying in one corner, looking at Excel sheets, I said, you know what, let's just do what we can. I work with a leadership coach who's often, who tells me to look for the opportunity in the crisis. So I was like, I'm faced with probably one of the biggest crises my business could ever be faced with. I have to shut down half the business, but what can I do to kind of salvage it a little bit? And the love that I saw, when I announced that I was shutting the cafe, the love that I saw from people, I was like, wow, I knew that I built something that I love, but to see like thousands and thousands of messages pouring in. So we took that, we made a cafe cookbook, we made another, book which helped us survive. And in that whole process, I think I kind of figured, what's the next best step? What do I do next? And I think that's what you were talking about, right? You don't need to have a full concrete plan in front of you, but just what's the next best thing? And I kept doing that. I was just like, I remember talking to you and I was just like, one day at a time.
Yeah.
Today's over. Today was a good day. Let's wait for tomorrow. That's what last year was like.
And also you took that time because I was running through your book, right? And as I was running through it, I was like, this is almost like you took, sometimes when you are in a situation like this, you kind of go back to why did you start doing this in the first place? And in many ways, your book feels like that. Your book feels like you went back to saying, this is why I wanted to do this. So this is almost like ground zero of my entire motivation to do it. So when did you start working on it? I know that you've written multiple books, but this one feels a little extra special.
This one is extra special. Like all the other books, right? They followed a very specific theme. So it was about like easy baking for the Indian home kitchen, or healthy baking, or eggless baking. This one, I was like, why am I baking? And the pandemic happened and suddenly everyone was baking banana bread and making sourdough. So what is so magical about baking that makes you feel like you have some control and you have some comfort and joy in a time that is so uncertain and you don't know what's happening around you. So for me, it was really, I almost felt like I was 23 again, right? I was back in my parents' home kitchen. I was in pajamas all day. There was nothing else. I was baking like I have a 5,000 square foot professional kitchen here with like a 60 people team that can do anything that I want. And now I was at home with no ingredients. Suddenly you couldn't find, butter was out of stock and sugar was not available. So I was like, what is in my pantry? What can I do with this? And it just became when you're passionate about something and it becomes your profession, over the course of 10 years, that passion kind of starts fading a little bit in the day-to-day, right? So for me, it was just about like, oh, why do I really do this? If I quit, and one of the things I thought of, right? I thought I'll just stop this altogether and I could be a content creator, right? I'll just maybe get
you had a podcast, you were doing content.
So I was like, I'll become, I'll get into the content business and take that up full time and all of that. So I went through all phases and this book was just like, it was born out of this. No, this is my journey as Pooja, right? It's not in isolation. Recipe's not going to make any sense, but this is what defines me. This is my relationship with food. This is my relationship with baking. And it's really personal. And I was very nervous to write it and put it out. And the thing is, when you're in your room, like when you're writing this in the middle of the night and no one is there, I'm talking to a friend. And now suddenly like, oh, everyone's read what that's like. So but I'm happy that I did it.
And that's what I find interesting about how you function, right? There's the entrepreneur side of you. There is the chef side of you. Then there is the content creator. And I feel writing is in many ways very different from being a content creator because it's a longer process. It's almost like, you are in it and, it's almost like it becomes a part of your process. And at some point you don't even know when to stop or when to let it go and move ahead. So, and then there's also the podcast which you do, which is in many ways for me, it's different from regular content creation because it's not like you're documenting, you're actually doing that. And so when you look at all of these, how do you map your life around? Because this, and it's not about productivity, I guess. It's more about saying, how do you map it around to make sure that, you're satisfied across all?
So I basically, I like to kind of go with the rhythm and flow of what I'm feeling like at that any given moment, right? And I like to view it as, if you literally had to make a Venn diagram of your purpose and your strengths and where that overlap, right? Wherever that overlaps for me is where I grab my vision from. So I'm like, okay, what is it that I'm really good at? What do I feel like is my purpose? And how do I kind of, it's the podcast, for example, right? It was not something that somebody told me to do. It wasn't something that I thought this will be great content, let's create it. I just genuinely felt like as an entrepreneur, there's not, as an Indian entrepreneur, there's not too many places I can go to where people are being real about their problem. No one is saying this stuff. Everyone's like crushing it, killing it, fundraise, unicorn, IPO, like all of that.
Yeah.
Really. But like, who's really talking about, what happens when you work 16 hours and like, something completely spirals and every day is spiral, right?
Yeah.
So it actually came out from that space. So I just kind of go with that sort of feeling and rhythm and flow and see, okay, what is it that I want to solve for next? And I go with that. So, and I just truly enjoy it. Like there's no other, I wouldn't do something if it felt like this is work, because I do have a day job. All this other stuff kind of gives me the creativity and drives me and brings me back to putting in more into this, so that's how I like to function.
Now, I have a bunch more stuff to ask you, but I've been told that we need to go in for a break. So we'll do that and be right back with Advertising is Dead. I've been keeping track of what Intel's been doing, and they've impressed me yet again.
You heard about Intel vPro, huh?
Yeah, for security and manageability, there's nothing quite like Intel vPro. It helps manage and protect your organization's computer systems from cyber attacks and keeps them functioning at their best capacity.
It's something I found in my experience as well, right? Cybersecurity is something that you can't take lightly. Like whether it's personal or professional, we're definitely doubling down on this. It's a must.
Absolutely. With Intel's threat detection technology, which is built into the Intel hardware shield, your company's IT department can quickly detect and remediate the latest ransomware and crypto mining attacks.
And there's also all of their below the OS security, right? Which helps identify unauthorized changes to hardware and firmware. And then they have application and data protection, which helps prevent memory corruption and malware injection by isolating different machines on your organization's network, which in the end basically reduces attack surfaces.
It's good to see that Intel has a platform that's built for business.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, the Intel vPro platform also enables cloud-based manageability. So in the event of a cyber attack, it lets you remotely manage and repair systems simultaneously, even if they're not at the same location.
This is a godsend for these work from home times, especially.
Amen to that. Just go check out Intel vPro and Intel's other amazing products at intel.in/ITheroes. Intel vPro, it's built for business.
Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're still talking to Pooja. One more piece that I really enjoy about how I think there's a crossover that you've been able to do with your entrepreneurial side and your content creator side is that whenever I see a collab that you do, which is with a brand, it feels very like a content collab, but it's actually in a product. And I don't know, maybe it's just the way I've seen it. I've seen that, and I think that really works from a consumer side, right? So is there a process you go through when you say, okay, like I know you did something with Bumble sometime back, and there's also the Diwali ones which have come, which are literally like almost like a mithai macaron version. So what's your process like when you're doing, because you're bringing two things together?
So what I do for my own, social media, Instagram is I divide that between what I do for Love 15. So with Love 15 collaborations, like it's quite exciting. It's something that I've been doing since I started. We've collaborated with designers from year one, whether it was Nachiket Barve, Masaba Gupta, Nimish Shah, all these people, right? So the collaboration that we did now with Pavitra Rajaram, who used to be the designer at Good Earth, is I'm such a big fan of her work. And I was like, how can you take and design and packaging at Love 15 is something that, I give a lot of my attention and focus to, because I love to see that process. So that just happened very organically. It was meant to happen 3 years ago, and then the pandemic happened and this and that, and then no money and all of that. So finally it happened now. And I loved how it took shape and form and came to life. For my own, collaborations, actually the Bumble one was super interesting because it was me plus Love 15. And it was great. We've done some like these with Amazon. And I think it's exciting to be in this space, right? Because I did something for Shark Tank and I'm just like, okay, this is great because these are things that I truly love and enjoy in any case.
Yeah.
And if I can kind of weave my story in through with it, it just fits. And like you said, right, it doesn't seem like a sore thumb. It seems like, okay, this is organic and it's natural. So I really want to, I say no to a lot of things as well. And that's one very important lesson and something that I learned a few years ago. And I was like, you don't have to say yes to everything that comes your way. And it's very tempting when you're, especially when you've gone through the pandemic and work really, you're like, okay, I could use this. But just, I feel like there has to be some alignment with your belief systems. And if that happens, then, it's really magical to see the end result.
Yeah. One more aspect, which just keeps coming up, is the fact that all content creators now in many ways are building businesses. So there are two sides, right? One is you're building a business and you become a content creator to amplify it. Or you're a content creator who's building a business because that's the way to monetize and grow. What's your system for making them work in a way that the content creation satisfies you, but also helps amplify the larger business goal?
Yeah. So, like a few years ago, one of my investors was like, you spend too much time on Instagram. And now he's like, it's great that he spends so much time. But the amazing thing is we've always kind of realized that, at Love 15 or even with me, that the brand was bigger than the business. And we were like, this is a great problem to have, right? For anyone. Like this is the one where you can reverse engineer and fix it really fast. So that's what we've been working on, right? For me, it's amazing that I've been working on this for about 10 years and, content creation kind of comes to me easy. And now I do actually have a business and a product that I can plug in. So how do I make both of the worlds collide? And we're doing a lot of that. So the next phase of Love 15 is about scaling that part of the business, putting more of, of that in. And so you'll see it in a few months. It's quite exciting.
Yeah, you're doing, when I say YouTube now, you're doing shows. It's like there is now an entire, like, there's the media empire and then there is the Love 15 empire. They both coexist.
I'm going to be Oprah Winfrey, Varun. It's going to happen.
Yeah. And that's the exciting part of what most people don't get. And I love the investor example, because most people don't get the fact that you are in essence, as a content creator, you are a media network, and you're building an audience, and it can help you either plug in other people's products, or you can plug in your own product, and it just seamlessly stays there as long as you're authentic, like you said, right? It doesn't feel like, if you suddenly, I'm trying to think of a random example that you would suddenly post about. Like if you're randomly doing toilet cleaner, that would be very off-brand.
It's hygiene.
I'm like, unless you're doing really, really like other kind of, I've always been excited to do one of those. Though. I hope someone reaches out saying, will you do a toilet cleaner? I would do a toilet cleaner, right? It's just the fun of it. But that randomness aside, I asked you that also because I think it's interesting to see how this whole thing is evolving. You and I were on a panel sometime back, right? And we were talking about the whole creator economy piece. And I think some of the things you said was so interesting because you're in many ways that it happened organically together. It's not like you became a content creator to build your business, or you didn't mean for your business to be like the platform for your content. It just kind of happened in parallel tracks and then kind of started to work with each other. At which point for you was it that, okay, they're working together? This is while you were doing it naturally, there must have been a point where you say, okay, I need to organize this down.
About 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Because we started getting a lot of opportunities and someone is like, oh, we have a new show coming out on Amazon. And Pooja, can you do this for us? And then create a special, and Love 15 can create macaroons. And we'll just buy 1,000 boxes of macaroons and we'll give it to everybody. And I was like, oh, this is great. I didn't see this opening up as an opportunity. And then we're like, okay, let's kind of figure how we can do more of this and work towards this.
Which then brings me to an interesting point, because a lot of people who listen to this podcast are either just kicking off their career or are somewhere midway through it, trying to kind of make a pivot, etc. And you always assume because a business has, like, if you have hospitality and F&B as the category, it means that's pretty much like you need to be doing something in that, in like literally, like you either have to be a chef or you have to work in that hospitality part. But with these things converging, what are you seeing as roles that even as part of your team, which are really like scaling up, which someone says, okay, I love food, I'm very good at X.
Yeah,
there's a role for me.
Oh, there's just so much, right? And that's what I was on another panel a few days ago, and we were talking about jobs. How in the next 10 years, the whole industry and job market is going to change, and what is that going to evolve into? And I think just with the food business, right? Earlier it was like you rightly said, it was just you could be a chef or you could be a restaurateur. Now you can be a food stylist, you be a content creator, there's people who write only like captions for Instagram, like that's actually a thing. There's just like so many different things within the food space as well. There's R&D, there's different things. I know so many of these great content creators who open their own studios, and now they're doing research there. They have different kind of roles that they're hiring for, which didn't exist before, right? Like you have a recipe developer for YouTube. Where did that ever happen? You just have to make some recipes for social media. So there's a lot.
I did not know that was a thing.
Yeah, it's
explain that role to me. So you basically are trying to say what recipes will work on YouTube is what you're researching.
You research and see what is currently working. What can we come up with? What is easy? You analyze trends. YouTube gives you trend reports of what really works. You take that and then you just say, okay, how can I scale? How can I increase distribution, etc., etc. And that's your role. Like it's great, right? Yeah. Someone has to do it, right? If it's not the content creator doing it themselves.
And I think that's the really exciting part. Right? As these worlds kind of converge together, there's so much you can kind of do and kind of scale towards. So you need to have one core skill set, and then you have a basic understanding of an industry, or just have genuine interest in a certain industry. You can find a role for yourself and kind of do. Do you think that applies to you even starting, let's say, a business focused on any area now? I mean, if I'm an entrepreneur today saying, okay, I'm not a chef, but I really want to do something around food. I don't think I can be a restaurateur. What would you say I should kind of focus on if I want to build a business?
I mean, there's so many of that, right? Like now there's so many different there's consultations, there's cloud kitchens, there's a whole gamut of new things that people are doing. Everything that's online, you're just aggregators. Like there's so many things. So I don't think just being a chef or being a restaurateur is what is needed in the food space now. There's just, and even food marketing has changed. Everything, you have so many different concepts that are delivery only, and different things that are happening. So I don't think that there's one sort of box that fits all. But I just met someone the other day who's only making momos, like one kind, and that's only one person's only making ice cream. And I just feel like this is such a great opportunity and a great time where, when I started Low 15, businesses were so traditional. Restaurants were perceived to be in a certain manner. It was like you have to have a brick and mortar shop. You have to have a menu that spans 100 pages because, we as Indians love everything and multi-cuisine and this and that. And I mean, right now it's great. You can do a restaurant that's only serving one kind of ice cream and you'll have takeaway of it. Right. Yeah. So I think that it's a great time to be in this space. You can build your own Shopify website and get going like right away. You can sell merch, you can do everything. So I don't think there's a limitation on what you can do. Talking about merch as well, like there's all this food merch that's available out there. And it's really like, like my little mug here, which says, I just want cake and K-dramas. Like it just came out of, this is what I'm feeling right now. And I feel a lot of people are feeling the same. And it was like super successful. And I just think that you have to take those risks and not wait around. And, I think that's the main problem with most people who are like waiting, because you're like, and that was my problem also before I launched our packaged goods, right? Because I was like, everything needs to be perfect. It needs to be in order and the packaging needs to be great and the labels need to be this. And then the pandemic happened and you're like, you know what? Done is better than perfect. Let's just get going. The minute, we'll keep revising this as we go along, but the key thing is to just get started.
And the package goods part is interesting, right? Because sometimes even though it's in a similar space, it's so different in how you have to go about it. And I remember trying the dip key for the first time, and I was like, okay, this is because I'm not as much of a chai drinker anymore, but I enjoyed it as much. But I just thought it was product innovation, but also it was just like fun to have. What did you learn during that process? Not just like you need to get it out there, but what did you learn as you almost switching spaces in the same space?
Man, it's like you said, they are completely different worlds, right? Like I'm a trained pastry chef. I know how basic butter, sugar, flour, eggs work together. I know what will come out. I know how to make a delicious thing. That I take for granted. But now suddenly I started working on all our products about 4 years ago. And I was working with really top like R&D guys, Britannia, ex-Britannia, etc. And my mind was blown because I was just like, I know nothing, and this suddenly it was so humbling because I was like, oh, I know nothing of how anything works. I had to unlearn everything I knew. and start learning this whole new direction of product, of shelves, of like, firstly, it's the whole product development, then it's the business of, this consumer package goods, because you're like, oh, distribution works like this, supply chain works like this, the shelf works like this. And you're like, wow, I had no idea all this happens. And I had to like, teach myself and learn how to kind of cope with all of that.
Yeah.
And then finally, I was like, we narrowed down on product. We had everything right. Because for me, it was like, I can't have something that doesn't taste as good as something as that I would make fresh and serve someone, right? So that was always like, it has to be, we have to win on taste and we have to win on presentation. And while we got there, I was still like dilly-dallying and saying, yes, no, we'll find this, we need this, that. Pandemic happened and you're like, get it on the shelf, just get it out, do whatever you have to do to get it out. So that, and to see how well it was received and that people loved it, and people love a good story, like as well as the product itself. So I think it for me, it was like a whole personal journey going through that whole back end, understanding how it works. And now I'm at the stage where I'm like, okay, now if I have to take this one and make it 100, how do I go from there? So it's been quite interesting.
As you come closer to the end of every episode, I ask my guests a set of questions. They have not changed, and I don't intend to ever have them change. The same set of questions have, but always the answers are more interesting than the questions. The first one actually I should ask you, because I'm trying to figure what you'll say. What do you spend a lot of time doing outside of work and content creation that people would be like, what, once again, you spend a lot of time doing this? What is that this for you?
I spend a lot of time... It's mostly work. But I spend a lot of time learning new things. So I feel like that really drives me. It could be anything. It could be a sport. It could be a guitar, like a musical instrument. It could be a language. It could be a goal that I set for myself. So I do think that learning is important, and it really, like I said, it humbles you.
You're downplaying this, so I will call this one out. You give yourself a goal every year. There's something that you will achieve. You have run a marathon. You have
half.
Let's half marathon. Fair enough. Half marathon. You have learned French and given
a speech
talk
in front of 5,000 French people. Yes.
Yeah, that's why I'm downplaying it. And you and I are supposed to stand up together. That was our goal for last year, which we did not do.
I'm reading the book now, which is really good, the book that you gifted me. But, I feel like all through last year, I kind of lost my funny bone, I just feel like one of the things that happened to me is like I kind of, because everything was so heavy. Now finally I'm at a space where I'm laughing at everything. I'm like, everything's funny. Yeah. So I'll after Fuji, that's the next one.
Yes. For everyone listening, there's a book called Humor Seriously. It's a fabulous book on like how humor can help you in everything in life, like work and everything else. And I was telling Pooja about it, so I sent her the book, and it's fabulous. It teaches you so many things that you would not assume. And for me, the base thing where the book had me was saying, we all assume that humor means you have to be funny, and that humor isn't that at all. I think that's a great place to start. So yes, stand up will happen. Eventually. What can you put together in an instant?
Like a dessert or like a party?
This is an open-ended question.
I can put together a lot of things in an instant. Yeah, I can put together a holiday. I can put together a dish. I can put together a party. I can start a business. Anything in an instant. Go. Tell me what
Amazing. I'll do it. Nobody has given this multifaceted answer so far in 150 episodes. Everyone's come up with one.
I wear so many different hats. You tell me which one to pick from, and I'll pick and do it.
Anything you've read, watched, or listened to that you'd recommend recently? I know that you consume a lot of interesting content.
I do. I love reading, and I actually, for a long time, I've moved away from fiction. I read a lot of non-fiction.
Same here.
So I'm currently reading Think Again by Adam Grant, which is really making me think.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So it's that whole learning, unlearning process, right? So I just think that it's great. And actually, there's a book that I recently read, which I just cried. I don't know if people want to read it and cry after reading it, but that was one of my I'm going to pull out the name. It's called Tiny Beautiful Things by Cheryl Strayed. And it's basically about a columnist who talks, it's that journey, and every chapter will just make you cry. So, but it's really revealing. So I recommend reading it.
Amazing. I'm actually finishing Dave Grohl's autobiography.
Oh, how is it?
So nice, and it's so interesting. So because I'm a person who likes to read. There was a period I only read rock biographies. and autobiographies for the longest time. But this one is great because it's not a traditional, when you read something about a musician, you always believe it's going to be about debauchery and everything else. This guy wasn't really into like drugs. He wasn't. It's such a lovely book and it's almost like tiny story chapters, but it's very nice. It's like I'm really enjoying it. Especially when he starts talking about like performing in the White House and George Bush says, "Hey, dude," and he's like, "What? Did the president just call me dude?" Like, stuff like that. So it's a lot of fun. That's what I'm just finishing off right now. I'm trying to think of the last question for you. So the last question is always a play on the name. Why will X not die? I'm actually going to ask you. Okay, let me put it this way. There's a term I heard sometime back, which is called living the multi-hyphen life. So we all have hyphens in our bios, right? It's like you said, creator, hyphen, entrepreneur, etc. You are multi-hyphenated in the exact sense, right? Why do you think that multi-hyphen way in life will not die?
I think all of us are multi-hyphenated. I don't think there's, this who you are, who am I? And if you have one definitive answer, that's like really stopping growth. It's controlling who you can be. And I feel that that's something that I never want to do, right? I always want to be whatever I need to be in that moment. So in that moment, if it's, an entrepreneur that needs to run her business, or it's a chef who needs to create something, or a podcaster, whatever that is. So I just feel like, and that's all of us, right? We just kind of forget that we wear those different hats. We do it in all our relationships, right? Between a brother, sister, mother, all of those things. And I think we do it at work as well. So I just feel like that's the approach I take. Because the minute I say, if I define and say this is with a one-word answer and say this is it, then I'll only ever be that. Where's the growth and where's the fun there? So
amazing. Thank you so much, Pooja. Thanks for coming on the 150th episode of Advertising is Dead. Fabulous as always chatting with you. This time on the record, it's always off recording button. But I'm glad we could do this and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
If you like this podcast and you want to listen to more podcasts like this, head over to the IVM Podcast website or app or wherever you get your podcast from and look at all the podcasts that IVM makes. There's some really fun stuff there.
Hello, everybody. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Naan Curry, we broadcast our 50th episode. Sadaf and Archit invite one of the best food researchers in the country, Vikram Doctor. They discuss Indian street food, small-town delicacies, and the history of our most common food habits. On Smarter with Sid, Siddharth explores how data can be woven into a story through artificial intelligence. On Tere Mere Raaste, Kesho takes us to Dehradun, a city whose foundations were laid by a Sikh guru, and tells us how his famous basmati rice was introduced to it by an Afghan king living there in exile. On Cyrus Says, Cyrus is joined by former Indian cricketers and hosts of the Khel Niti podcast, Sabah Kareem and Nikhil Chopra, to talk about tons and tons of cricket. Tune in for a very fun episode. And don't miss the festive season special on the Habit Coach podcast, where Ashton Doctor talks about how our eating habits change during festivals. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors on the network this week: Cred, Bank of Baroda, Quarter, CoinSwitch, Kuber, Slate Coffee, Intel, Kotak Mahindra Bank, and Oxfam India. Thank you so much for making this possible.
If you're a cricket fan, check out Edges and Sledges, India's favorite cricket podcast.
The podcast focuses on Indian cricket, the IPL, and has a ton of banter both on and off the field.
We talk about the week's biggest cricket stories with current and ex-international cricketers, coaches, or sometimes just between us.
And it's hosted by me, DJ.
Me, Varun.
And me, Ashwin.
New episodes release every week.
You can catch us on the IVM Podcast's website, app,
or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Check out the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast.